On today's episode of the Football Fellowship podcast, we will be breaking down the huge title clash between Man City and Liverpool. The points were shared, but did one team deserve to win over the other? We'll be deciding that today. And it was Arsenal who took full advantage of that draw with a win of their own to put them top of the Premier League, at least for now, thanks to that £65 million man of the moment, Kai Havertz. And just below them, in that fourth place race, Spurs put on a huge 4-0 victory against Aston Villa, who seemed to completely fall apart. And could this mean the end of their hopes for Champions League? We'll be talking about that one as well. And as always on the Football Fellowship podcast, make sure you stick around towards the end of the episode for more rounds of the famous quiz as I face my co-host Mev in some rounds of Guess the Player, where you can play along yourselves at home as well.
Welcome back, and yes, just like Toby said, there is so much football to get into, so many fixtures with consequences for throughout the whole Premier League, and we have to start off with right at the top, first versus second, Liverpool versus Manchester City, the last time that we saw Pep Guardiola versus Jurgen Klopp in the Premier League, and it ended 1-1. And before we get into it, I think we just have to say, what an absolute gem we were treated to on Sunday. I mean, Villa Spurs to start it off, and then Liverpool Man City. I mean, that was Super Sunday at its absolute best. But I can't help but feeling just a little bit sad myself. I don't know if you're the same, Toby. I know you're probably a bit biased being an Arsenal fan, but can you appreciate that the last time we saw Klopp versus Guardiola, it was a game that absolutely lived up to the billing and did not disappoint?
Yeah, I mean, even as a biased Arsenal fan, to see them get a point each was pretty sweet. So even if the game wasn't as good as it was, I'm still pretty happy. Yeah, it was a really, really good watch. Really end-to-end. I think we saw the best of both teams, certainly throughout points in the game, which was really good. We saw players who have been under these fantastic managers for years really, really perform, and we got to see some new faces coming up as well, who those managers have obviously brought in recently. So yeah, a really, really good end to that massive rivalry, and it is such a shame that it's come to an end now with that game in the Prem at least.
Yeah, I'm so sad Klopp's leaving, but to be fair, he put out an absolute showing with this Liverpool side, and I was a bit worried when I saw the lineups, I won't lie. Seeing Gerald Kwanzaa and Conor Bradley on the right side of Liverpool's defence. Obviously, Ibrahim Konate picked up an injury in midweek in the Europa League, which was a massive concern. I thought maybe Joe Gomez would fill in there, and Andrew Robertson would be playing left back. That wasn't the case, but in terms of the midfield three and the front three, it's kind of what I expected. I didn't expect Salah to be starting this game, only just returning back a little bit too early for him. And I'd looked at that Man City side and I thought to myself, right, that is a serious side. You got John Stones inverting into midfield. You got the likes of Julian Alvarez, Erling Haaland, and the man at the moment, Phil Foden, all there. And with all of that being said, I still didn't even mention Kevin De Bruyne. And I thought to myself, do you know what? This is going to be a tough task. And it certainly was, because Man City in the opening 10 minutes, they absolutely dominated. And I was really trying to figure out what it was, why they were dominating. And I couldn't quite figure it out, but it was just the way that they were pressing. They were pressing Liverpool's back line. They were unable to make Liverpool to pass the ball out from the back, and they were really struggling to get the balls into midfield. Darwin Núñez was constantly being offside. He wasn't linking up play with the rest of the Liverpool forward line. And Man City thoroughly deserved their goal, I thought, in the opening few minutes.
Yeah, I definitely think that would have been a plan of Guardiola's, was to really try and suffocate Liverpool in those early stages. He knows going to Anfield is probably the toughest fixture in the league, and to be able to sort of dampen the crowd, I think, by just completely dominating that ball, not letting Liverpool have any attacks, not letting that crowd get G'd up, was absolutely huge, and it did ultimately result in City, I think, dominating that first 20, 25, even up to half an hour from that tactic of very, very high intensity and really trying to keep that ball. And it ultimately, came from a corner. They have been the talk of the moment, I think it's fair to say, in the football world. Set pieces, throw-ins, corners, free kicks, everyone is going on about them, how there's set-piece coaches, how the top teams are really putting in a lot of time outside of games to perfect those. And this, I think, was a perfect example of that. I think this set-piece was something that may have only been worked on for a week or so. I think it was very Liverpool specific. I think Guardiola definitely identified the weaknesses in Liverpool's zonal system and maybe the personnel in those positions. Obviously, McAllister being that person who was marking that front post zone, not directly on the front post, but just in front. And I think Pep would have identified this is an area where someone who's not the best aerially, not even the best defensively, I think it might be fair to say, something they can target, and an area where they can get someone like John Stones who's going to be winning those balls in there unchallenged. And it just came off almost like it was straight from the training ground in the end.
And to be fair, it exactly was. I will defend Alexis McAllister and say he is great defensively in open play, but set pieces, I can see why Man City decided to target him. I think the fact that Man City, they actually did something very clever, which was, it was only John Stones who made a serious run into the box. I know he only made a couple of yards to get the ball, but I think the fact that everyone else held their position, which didn't allow any of the Liverpool defenders to crowd that 6-yard area, I was actually incredibly clever as well. And I think to myself, fantastic finish from John Stones, just like on the keeper's nose. And I think to myself, fair enough, Man City. I mean, of all the ways to go 1-0 up at Anfield, a set piece, you can't let any opportunity let you by, and you have to take it any chance you can get. But I think from there, I think City's probably biggest mistake was the fact that they didn't go on and try and get another. I thought they could have smelled blood if they really went for it. But the fact is, I think it was epitomised by Kyle Walker going slowly towards the ball for a throw-in, really jigging up the Anfield crowd, and then they were like really getting up to it. But I thought to myself, no, this is your chance, City. If you want to go ahead and if you want to score 2, then you can. And I thought to myself, if you go 2-0 up at Anfield in the first half, not only are you dampening the spirits of the Anfield crowd, but the players themselves, and they think to themselves, right, maybe today isn't our day. But they didn't do that. They set themselves, a little bit more defensively, and they invited Liverpool onto them, and that's exactly what happened. And I just thought to myself, it was a mistake because Liverpool did not miss up the opportunities.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and such a strange decision that I feel like we never see that from City. We never see them sit off, and I think, again, that comes round to the fact that maybe the calibre of the game, it being an away game at Anfield, knowing Liverpool's threats and trying to kill that game off. But as you said, if they could have gone out for the rest of that first half, the next sort of 25 minutes of that first half, they could have got a second, and they just didn't. And from then on, Liverpool really picked up momentum, and I think in that second half especially completely dominated and were the better side, especially in the transition. They looked so quick, so on it, and City looked almost tired at times, I think it's fair to say. The way Liverpool were able to move that ball so quickly and exploit that space behind, City were struggling to recover it at times. I think Liverpool did so well to get back into that game, and back into a game against one of the best teams in Europe I was very, very impressed. Very impressed.
Yeah, thank you, mate. I mean, Liverpool were just amazing from there on then, and I just couldn't try and figure it out. It was relentless, and I just thought to myself, oh, if only you did this for the first 10 to 20 minutes as well before the goal. And I thought to myself, oh, it would have been fine. But I think it was the fact that I think Szoboszlai and Elliott were just the wrong side of Rodri every time I looked, and I thought to myself, what's going on there? And I found John Stones was not in midfield as often as I thought he was going to be. He was in the back line himself, and I just thought to myself, this isn't the Man City taking possession of the ball. I mean, it was really nice to see, to be fair, just Man City on the back foot and defending, because you don't see those players of those caliber defending as often as they did in this game. And it's really nice to see. And I just thought to myself, Liverpool were relentless, and it came from relentless pressing, the Liverpool's goal, and it was Darwin Núñez, the man who divides opinion, and I think rightly so, because he's had a fantastic season so far. But in this game, he was a threat, but he had no end product, constantly offside. But he did make the penalty. I think Nathan Ake didn't put enough on the pass whatsoever, and I thought it was a calamitous goalkeeping by Edison to come out and just wipe out Núñez. It was the most obvious penalty, I think, one of the most obvious penalties I've ever seen. And then, 2.5 minutes until the penalty is taken, Alexis McAllister, who's not the regular penalty taker, but he did take a handful for Brighton. And I thought to myself, when he slotted it, I thought, okay, this is now Liverpool's time. But credit to City, they did defend well. But I do have to say, Luis Diaz, world-class player, and had a fantastic game. Absolutely rinsed Kyle Walker and Rodri at one point. I think probably my favourite moment I've seen from Liverpool players this season. But he did have chances to win this game.
Yeah, Diaz and Núñez both had a combined XG of 1. I think it was almost exactly 1 together. Had some very good chances, the pair of them, and Diaz certainly had the pick of the bunch. That one-on-one against Everton where he tried to sort of curl it around Edison, and in the end it just got almost no curl, and it just sort of lofted quite wide in the end. I think surprisingly how wide it actually was in the end. That was the key opportunity, and it was a lovely pass from Salah that put him through. Even Kyle Walker couldn't recover and bring that defence back. It was such a good pass and such a good run, and he just didn't quite have the finish. But as you said, he had a really, really good game nonetheless. 4 out of 6 of his dribbles completed, 3 key passes, 6 out of 13 ground duels. A really, really well-rounded performance from Diaz. And if he would have had the end product, we would have been singing his praises, how he could have potentially won Liverpool the league with that game.
Oh, yeah, the league, I wish. But yeah, he definitely had a fantastic game. And to be fair, a player who didn't have a fantastic game, I thought was Kevin De Bruyne, because I'm not sure if you saw, but I think it's been all around social media. The fact that, Kevin De Bruyne and Pep Guardiola having a little chat on the bench of Man City when he got hooked off in that second half. And to be fair, I thought to myself, fair enough, because he wasn't having the best of games. He was getting isolated. Man City were struggling to get the ball to him, and he was struggling to create any chances. And I thought to myself, yeah, you know what, bring on Kovacic. Let him come into the midfield, play a little bit deeper, help control the game a bit more. And I thought Man City did get a foothold later on in that second half when Kovacic did come on. Do you think it was right for Pep to do that? And secondly, do you agree with Kevin De Bruyne's reaction?
I think at the time, the way the game was progressing, Pep was able to identify that City did need a bit more control, especially in that midfield. As good as De Bruyne is going forward and producing those incredible moments, he's not someone who, I guess, specialises in maintaining possession when you get it, and I think that's where Kovacic excels. When he gets on the ball, he very, very rarely uses it. He's got a fantastic first touch, he's got a fantastic reading of the game, and he can be someone who can sit alongside Rodri and try and keep that ball for City that they were really struggling to do. And also, he's pretty decent at being able to recover it when it was passed over to Liverpool as well. So I do understand that change, but on the other hand, I do also understand De Bruyne's frustration. He is one of the best players in the world, and I think when you see someone like Kevin De Bruyne react like that, who's not sort of one of those arrogant footballers who demands to be on the pitch, he seems like quite a modest person. I think maybe his reaction was less frustration at himself coming off and more potentially him seeing it as a negative defensive-minded change, when I think he wanted City to sort of press on and go for a goal. And maybe when he was looking at the players left, there might not have been someone who is as creative as Kevin De Bruyne. Whether it was De Bruyne himself being there, or maybe if De Bruyne was replaced by someone similar to him, there may not have been that much of a reaction. Yeah, I think any top player who's being substituted in a game like that, it's understandably pretty frustrating. But yeah, it was a funny one. Don't think it was a bad change, but I kind of understand his frustration as well. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said. It is one where he's Man City's one of best player, and I think, apart from maybe Rodri and Haaland and maybe Edison in goal, maybe John Stones as well, you just don't take your best players off. He's one of your core, but I think in the game it needed to be done at that moment, and it had to be done for the right good of the team. And I think maybe he overreacted a little bit, but I think I completely agree. It was the game, the occasion, what was at stake. I can understand his frustration because he wants to be out there, because he could have got Man City a winning goal. But one player who almost did was Jeremy Doku, and it was really weird, the fact that I thought Doku was going to start this game, and Julian Alvarez was the one who started out wide on the left. I didn't think he had a great game. I thought maybe Doku should have come on a bit earlier, if anything. But then he, makes a run down the left-hand side, and he cuts inside, and he hits the post and then narrowly goes on to hit Kelleher, rebounds and saves it. I just thought to myself, that was so close. Game of fine margins. Like, I think late on in the 80-ish minutes, and I just thought to myself, Liverpool could have absolutely, for all the pressure and dominance in that second half, could have gone and lost it. But they also could have gone and won it. That Alexis McAllister non-penalty decision right at the end. Toby, what were your thoughts on it?
It was never a pen, and a draw is just a fair result for the league. And in all honesty, I think it was pretty harsh that it wasn't given. And I think if I was a Liverpool fan, I would be pretty fuming as well. I completely understand sort of the anger. I think afterwards, it was such a strange one. If you can see Doku is completely looking at the ball, I don't think it was particularly aggressive or malicious. I don't think there were too many studs showing, but I think when you're putting your foot that high, especially in the penalty area, you are running that risk completely. He should have just tried to header it out. And I think maybe it wasn't given because of the way McAllister went for the ball. his body positioning going for the ball was not like he was trying to get the ball at all, and he was trying to win the foul. And I think that actually hindered his case of getting the penalty. He seemed to almost turn into the foot as opposed to really trying to control the ball. He completely sort of fell down afterwards. Understandably, it probably hurt. But I think maybe that's what the refs saw. But nonetheless, I think it probably should have been a penalty. And I think they may have got this one wrong.
Yeah, well, no surprises as well. I do think it was a penalty. I do agree with you a little bit, though, because I think if McAllister goes with his head for that instead of his chest or arm, then I think that's given as a penalty. But I also do think that should have been given as a penalty, even though he was trying to bide a little bit. Doku still doesn't make contact with him very high up, and I think, VAR should be overturning that. I mean, there was a few VAR talking points. We're going to talk about this on this episode, but I think for me that was a penalty as well, and Liverpool probably would have gone on to win the game 2-1, which would have been huge for the title chances. Who do you think the point was a better result for?
That's such a good question, and I'm honestly not sure. I've been trying to think about it, and I've been listening to people trying to discuss maybe who they think that point was good for. Pep Guardiola's come out and said that a point at Anfield is always a good result. I think Klopp has said that he was really impressed with the performance from the team, so maybe he also sees a point as a good result. I would probably say it's a better point for Liverpool at the moment. I think the way City have been playing in recent weeks, I think many could have expected City to go there and get the win, especially from the opening stages of the game. And I think Liverpool will be pretty happy with a point, but then given the penalty at the end, I'm honestly not sure. I'm really, really not sure, because it's always difficult in a title race with a draw. It's 2 points dropped and only 1 point gained. It's such a massive difference between a win, and I think in terms of Arsenal, from my perspective, that's why a draw was such a good result for our team, because it meant both teams dropped 2 points as opposed to one gaining 3 and one dropping 3. So I'm not sure. I think both will really, really try and see the positives of it to try and keep that momentum going for the rest of the season. So yeah, probably good for both in the end, I'd say. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. I think both teams will be disappointed. I think Man City will be disappointed because they went 1-0 up and then they led Liverpool back into it, and they didn't really look like they were ever going to win the game. And I think from Liverpool's perspective, they'll be disappointed because they had the chances to win the game as well. So I think both teams will be disappointed. Both teams will be happy. It's tough because, like you said, Arsenal are in the title race as well. There's a third team, which means that not only if it was just Liverpool versus Man City, I think Man City would have had to come to Anfield and win. But because they have another game against another title rival at home, you kind of go, okay, it's not the worst, but it's not the worst for Liverpool either. And it's a weird one because I'm not used to 3-horse title races, so I don't know what this means because I haven't seen the other fixture, which is Man City versus Arsenal, which is coming up. But then there's also so many more difficult fixtures to come up. I think Spurs and Man United, and I think Aston Villa as well, are going to have a huge impact on the title race. And I just think, it's so hard to tell, and that's what makes this game, which is absolutely amazing, because there was so much to talk about. There's so many ramifications and consequences, but I think another game which also had massive ramifications, but this time for the top 4, only a couple of places further down, was Aston Villa 0, Tottenham Hotspurs 4. And I'll be honest, I didn't see this coming. I thought this was going to be a really close game between two sides, both fighting out for the top 4, but Spurs won it comprehensively in the end. How did they do it?
I was exactly the same as you, mate. I think I said last week I felt that Villa were going to win this game. I think they were playing quite well. I think they could have had a good setup. And it was just in that second half, they completely fell apart. I think the first half was pretty even. If anything, Villa probably had the better chances. I don't think Spurs really got going. And then once they got that first goal, it just completely fell apart for Villa. They got the second fairly quickly after that, then the John McGinn red card, and then they just added 2 goals at the death to put on a massive, massive performance. Huge from Spurs. And yeah, it was just that last 40 minutes was so impressive from Spurs. I think what really hindered Villa potentially in that second half was we touched on it again, something we touched on last week very briefly, was how Spurs, I think in the first sort of 60, 70 minutes against Crystal Palace, they really struggled against their back 3 and their wing backs. It meant that their fullbacks weren't really able to invert as much and felt they had to protect those wide areas a little bit more. And that's exactly how Villa lined up in this game with the 3-back, very similar to Glasnow's Crystal Palace. I think maybe that was potentially they would have seen that game and seen if we can do this, it means we can try and dominate the wide areas and the midfield if Spurs restrict the inversion of their fullbacks. But the difference was that they had both Udogie and Pedro Porro in this game, who are just so good. I'm so jealous of Spurs that they have both of those fullbacks, possibly the best fullback combination in the league. They are able to invert, they are able to stay wide, they are able to cover, and I think they may have been underestimated in this game, and it meant Villa at times weren't able to play the system that they have done all season and potentially compromise that just for this one game.
Yeah, I do agree. I think Porro and Udogie were fantastic, but I do think Villa also did play into their hands a little bit. I mean, it did feel like going 5 at the back, and let's be honest, it wasn't a 3 at the back, it was a proper old-fashioned 5 at the back, because with Cash and Digne, a left wing-back and right wing-back, they weren't getting too far forward, apart from when they had a decent amount of possession on the ball. And I did think to myself, the first time you're doing that in the league this season, and you're doing it against one of your rivals, your biggest rival for top 4, I think it has to be said, Spurs, who now are only 2 points behind Villa with a game in hand, it has to be said. And I just thought to myself, why? It feels like you're being so defensive when you have a way of playing and a style and a formation that works and has been working so far this season. And you decide to say, okay, we're going to do something different, but just for this one game. And I just thought it was really defensive from Unai Emery. I thought, what kind of message does it send out to the fans and the players? Surely you go out and say, right, we're Aston Villa, and I know that doesn't necessarily mean as much as, if you were to say it about, oh, we're Man United, we're Man City, we're whoever. But I think so, with the season they've had so far, just sends the wrong message of we're going to try and accommodate for the opposition, even though we have had a fantastic season so far. And it just felt like, John McGinn wasn't as far forward as he was normally. He had to play a lot more defensive, and that kind of hindered Aston Villa's build-up play. I thought Ollie Watkins felt a lot more isolated. I thought Leon Bailey, who didn't start in midweek against Ajax, which you could maybe say was the reason why a lot of players were leggy in this game for Villa, he didn't start, and he was probably one of the most leggy. He looked like really poor in this game, which is really surprising because he's had a fantastic second season at Villa Park. And I thought to myself, what are you doing? And the less we talk about the first half in this game, the better, because nothing really happened. But then, right at the beginning of the second half, Mickey van der Ven, who'd been fantastic in that first half to snuff out any danger, he goes off injured, and you think to yourself, ooh, right, this is it. This is where the game turns, and Aston Villa go ahead and take the game by the scruff of its neck. But they didn't, and I didn't understand it, I'll be completely honest. And I thought to myself, you just let the game go by, and you've let Spurs take the initiative. I just found it really, really confusing.
Yeah, it may have been one of those positions where Villa are higher in the table, they do have a few more points, that they thought a draw could have been a good result and potentially been enough to, I guess, keep a bit of momentum going, as opposed to really trying to win it and then lose it. Maybe that could have been the thinking, I'm not sure, but ultimately Spurs took advantage of however Villa were lining up and put on a really, really impressive second half performance. They looked a lot quicker than they did in the first half. It's the same again against this Crystal Palace game last week. Exactly the same structure. When they got to that point and they clicked so well. Started moving it a lot quicker, a lot more interchanging of position amongst the Spurs players, and within 10 minutes, I would say the game was over. We saw Maddison and Johnson both score within 5 minutes of each other, and then McGinn essentially went and threw the game away with a pretty terrible challenge. It was like a knee up onto, I can't remember, I think it was Udogie's thigh. It was like a dead leg you do to someone at secondary school. It was awful. Definite red card. I don't think there was any surprise there. And the game was gone at that point. They had lost it, and it was thrown away in 10 minutes.
Yeah, it absolutely was. And I will say, in real time with John McGinn's red card, I didn't think it was. But then when I looked at it back on the replay, I think that's one where the replay does help. And, people say, oh, maybe slowing it down isn't the best thing to do. Maybe you need to play it in real time. But I think slowing it down did really show that McGinn was nowhere near that ball whatsoever, and his intent wasn't to win the ball, so it had to be a red card. And I was surprised in real time, but I think, perfectly right. I think the fact that the on-field referee actually got that spot on, I think fair play to him as well. But yeah, like you said, the game had gone at that point. I just thought, you're 2-0 down, the captain Aston Villa, and you lose your head that badly, and I just thought to myself, oh God, what's going on? It just felt like Aston Villa capitulated in this game. But then they absolutely did later on, because, Unai Emery made some changes, tried to make him a bit more solid defensively. but it absolutely didn't work because I saw I think it was the third goal. Yeah, the third goal, where I think it's Zaniola and Moreno down at left wing back kind of position, and I think Kulusevski does them both through a bit of luck and a little bit of skill, and then both of their reactions is just to throw their hands up in the air and be like, oh, how on earth did that happen? I'm just thought to myself, run back after the ball. What are you doing? And then Spurs score, and I'm just like, all I can see is Unai Emery on the sideline just pointing to his head saying, keep your heads. And Aston Villa were not doing that. I mean, at the end of the day, goal difference might have a massive play to part at the end of the season. And Aston Villa actually started off with a six goal difference better than Spurs, which now obviously Spurs have a 2 better because Aston Villa conceded 4, Spurs scored 4. I just thought to myself, I was just so disappointed because this might be the making of this Aston Villa side, to be fair. I mean, how did they react from here? Because this has got to be the worst result they've had this season. I know you can maybe say the Newcastle 5-1 at the beginning of the season. I mean, they lost poorly to Man United at home. But I think to myself, this is the game that mattered the most in the league up until this point. And the fact that you've lost it and in this manner, questions have to be asked of the character of Aston Villa, and how they respond is going to be so crucial.
And that's such a key point when you get to these last few games of the season, that a lot of it is down, 1, to confidence, and 2, down to momentum. They can really carry you to the end of the season and see you pick up so many points. And Villa losing this game 1 or 2-0, and McGinn not losing his head and getting that red card and it becoming 4-0 could be a huge difference. That could be a massive dampener for the squad. The confidence could drop right down. They now have to really reset themselves for the next couple games. And they've given that huge sense of that huge win to their closest rivals for 4th place in Spurs. They're going to have the complete opposite of that. They're going to be riding extremely high after that result, extremely confident, and going into their next games, they're going to be thinking, well, if we can beat Villa 4-0, there's no reason why we can't be getting top 4. And I think just that red card and those 2 goals could really have made all the difference and not made this as even much of a talking point, really, because it could have huge ramifications for the rest of Villa's season ultimately. And on the other hand, it is a huge win for Spurs, and not one that they needed, but I think maybe people had forgotten a little bit about how good Spurs really are this season, since they had that sort of drop when they had all of their injuries, and sort of over Christmas they did start to peel away from the rest as Liverpool and City sort of pressed on. That now in the title running as well, as we've said, they've still got to play City, Liverpool and Arsenal. They're thinking, if we can beat Villa 4-0, there's no reason why we can't beat any other team in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. And so many things going right for Spurs at the moment. Heung-min Son got 3 returns in this game. Maddison doing Maddison things. Paro and Udogie, as we've spoken about. Pepe Sarr, who we haven't even mentioned, who I thought his run to break through the back line of Aston Villa for that first goal was immense. But the only negative, you have to say, is Mickey van der Ven's injury. His pace is so crucial to Spurs' high line. How would you see them coping without him? Because, like we said, he is the only negative point to take from this game.
Yeah, it seems like the new signing, is it Dragozan? I'm not too sure how to pronounce it, but he was obviously the replacement in this game. He seems pretty quick. I think they won't lose too much in terms of pace in that downgrade. It's just in terms maybe experience, and the way that Van der Ven and Romero's partnership is fantastic. They are very, very in sync, and they have that partnership where they have that belief in the other one that they could cover for them. I think Romero may have to be a little bit more cautious. He is going to be thinking in the back of his mind that obviously they haven't played together much. He hasn't played in the league too much, and may have to take on sort of a more of a leadership role in that back line. So it could have some effect, but I think the way that Spurs play, it's not one of their most important positions, I think it's fair to say. I think if it was maybe an injury to somebody like Son or to one of their fullbacks again, it could have a bit more impact. But I think the way that Spurs have been so good at winning that ball high and keeping that ball high, it shouldn't have too much of an issue if it's against sort of a team that we expect Spurs to dominate the ball. In the bigger fixtures, it's a slightly larger problem though, with Spurs having to sit back more, see more defensive actions and the defence a bit on the ball a little bit more. Then yeah, it could cause some problems, but I think Dragozan could come in and do a decent job, I reckon.
Yeah, I agree. I just think he's a little bit too similar to Romero in that sense. Having two Romeros might not be a good thing considering some of the disciplinary history. But let's move on to the other side of North London, as Arsenal beat Brentford 2-1 to go top of the Premier League after Liverpool and Man City drew 1-1 on Sunday. And Arsenal, got the win in the end. But let's start with it. Should Havertz have even been on the pitch, Toby?
It's a good question. Thomas Frank doesn't seem to think so after thinking he should have been booked for simulation. And it's a difficult one because VAR aren't able to give yellow cards, obviously, as we know, so there's no question mark in that sense. It's just how much of a dive does it have to be a yellow card, I think is a big question as well, and one that's quite subjective. I think it was very, very much looking for the foul and expecting the leg to be there. And I think the leg from, I believe it was Collins, was there. And there may have been very slight contact. I'm trying very, very hard not to be biased. And I'm so close to saying it shouldn't have been a yellow card. But I wouldn't have been surprised if it would have been given as a yellow card straight away. I think if the ref was confident that there was no connection between the players, he would have given a yellow card. But I think maybe he thought there was connection and it just wasn't enough, and not that Havertz was looking for as much as he was. What do you reckon?
I think you're reaching massively there, mate. I think he should have been off. I think that should have been a yellow for a dive. Easy. There was no contact by Collins. He did dive because there was no contact whatsoever. And I thought to myself, yeah, he's maybe looking for the contact and maybe he's expecting it. But because there is none whatsoever, it is a dive. And then you could even make the case for the elbow. But I don't think that was a red card at all. I don't even think that was a yellow. I think it's the elbow was one where both players are jumping forward and elbows being high is a natural position. I mean, you could have had the Brentford defender hitting Havertz in the face. It could have been the other way around. So I don't think the elbow was. I think the fact that Havertz already had a yellow, that one should have been another yellow as well. But I just think the thing that saved Havertz was the fact that I think that if you look at the replay, there's 3 Brentford defenders in between the referee and Havertz. So that prevents him from even looking whatsoever. I think the linesman does have a better view of it, but I do think that even then, I don't think the linesman can give that, because I don't think from where he would have been stood that it would have been an obvious yellow card either. So I think the referees, you can understand why they didn't give a yellow, but I think if one of the the officials on the pitch saw it, I think Havertz would have been off. I think it was a dive. But let's actually talk about the game itself, because to be fair, it was a pretty good game of football. Starting off with Declan Rice's lovely headed goal from a Ben White cross. Declan Rice's 6th goal of the season, which means that Brentford have conceded 16 headers, the most of any team in the Premier League. And he's just such a clutch player, isn't he, Declan Rice?
Yeah, he's stepped up massively. He's been so important for us. And as you mentioned, in terms of headers, that's something we really gain with our lineup that we had against Brentford. Not only are we looking really dangerous from set plays, but I think even from open play, having Declan Rice as an 8 and someone who can crash the box when needed, and having Havertz as that 9 just adds really, really good aerial threat for us, and something that we would obviously lose if Rice was sitting as a 6, and it could be somebody like Trossard playing as the 8 or Smith Rowe, and then having Jesus up front. The difference in terms of height and stature is huge. So that ultimately could be what potentially won us this game, is having those tall, strong players playing as opposed to others, and having them win the headers and score the goals. So yeah, it was a strange game, and I think it would have been a very, very different game if not for the Ramsdale mistake and the Wissa goal. I think if we would have gone in at half-time at 1-0, I think the second half we would have looked a lot better. I think Brentford would have had to come out a lot more, looked a lot more open, and I think we probably would have won fairly comfortably, maybe 2 or 3-0. Whereas the timing that they got that goal was absolutely huge, and it almost cost us the game if not for our last-minute winner. So yeah, it was a shame to see for Ramsdale as well. It was tough because he's obviously not had the easiest ride this season.
Yeah, the timing of it was an absolute killer. I mean, Arteta probably had his old halftime team talk planned out, ready to go, and then that goal goes in, and he's just like, right, that's not at all what I expected. And I think to touch on Ramsdale, obviously his last time he played for Arsenal was in the FA Cup against Liverpool, but now Arsenal being knocked out of the FA Cup, only the league and Champions League, and the only reason he was in goal in this game was because David Raya was ineligible to play against his side, he's on loan from Brentford. I think this is the last time we will see Ramsdale in playing for Arsenal in goal this season, potentially ever in an Arsenal shirt, depending on what happens in the summer. And I just thought to myself, you know what? Yeah, that is a bit of a howler. I mean, that's all it is. But credit to Wissa, because he smelled the opportunity and he obviously put his body in the line and he got a goal. And to be fair, he worked really hard for it in that moment, and I think he deserved it. But I do think that Ramsdale did, redeem himself in the second half. He made a lovely save from Collins. There was another one as well, which I can't remember, which I'm sure we'll come on to at some point. But he made two wonderful saves. Oh, that was it. Ivan Toney's long-range effort with his left foot, which I thought was just an outrageous effort in general. But then the fact that Ramsdale put out absolutely worthy, being miles off his line, as most keepers are nowadays, to try and be a sweeper keeper. I thought to myself, what a fantastic save that was, to adjust his feet as quickly as he did. And, Brentford were knocking on the door. But I think what was so surprising was Arsenal were dominating Brentford, as you'd expect, going for the goal and going for the win. But it was the set pieces which they were really doing a number on them, the crosses into the box. And I think we've touched on it earlier, the fact that this season you've seen the top teams being the best at set pieces and dominating the lower teams, which is normally the other way around, because the teams lower down the division use it as a neutralizer and a way of creating opportunities. But to see Arsenal dominating Brentford, it just felt like complete roles reversed, and something that, this season I think it's highlighted how important set pieces are. And I just thought to myself, fair play for Arsenal dominating Brentford in set pieces, but also in open play, because they eventually did get the goal from open play, and it was that man Havertz.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see some stats, I think, on like player height in the top teams over sort of recent seasons. I remember times at maybe like at Man City back in sort of the 2010s, that Barcelona side in the late noughties, United when they were at their peak, I think in sort of around maybe 2013-ish. It didn't feel like there were really sort of big dominant players playing in midfield and going forward in the attacking line. But I think a lot of the top sides have identified the amount of corners that they win in games just by having the ball in the final third. They're sort of looking at double-digit corners, I think, most games in games where they are dominating. And we used to see so many teams take short corners because they didn't want to risk the possession and lose the possession. But now the way that teams win the ball back and the way that they press, and they know they're going to get possession back anyway, so why not try and make the most of this opportunity to get a free cross into the box? And now we see teams playing almost with 4 centre-backs across the back line. Taller strikers seem to be sort of coming back into fashion a little bit more. Players like Osimhen, he's decent height, and not too many of those sort of small technical strikers as much. I think people want more physical presence, the way that corners and set plays are being worked and being as valuable as they are. Really interesting to see in the teams like Arsenal and City being those sort of leading in that at the moment. It'll be interesting to see whether sort of the mid-table sides are starting to pick that up as well. But yeah, it was ultimately a headed goal from Havertz that got the winner. Really, really nice header, good positioning, and a great cross from Ben White, who was very, very good in this game and deservedly got the man of the match with his 2 assists. And just to touch on Havertz briefly, he's now scored 4 in 4. But for me, I'm not really fussed about the goals that Havertz scores. I know over the last few seasons he's been playing as that striker for Chelsea, and he hasn't been scoring enough for a striker to score. But I think the way that Havertz plays, whether he is on that left-sided 8 or as that false 9/striker, whatever position he may be playing in, I think it's his link-up play that I've been most impressed with recently. He's really gotten to the same wavelength as the rest of the Arsenal teammates. He has looked a lot more confident. He's looked like he's got a lot more energy in him as well. And that for me has been what is most impressive, as opposed to just scoring goals, because I don't even think that's really the best part of his game. I think it's the way he links up with his teammates.
Yeah, I mean, him in that false line position is just absolutely fantastic, because, like you said, he can play in numerous positions. He's got the footballing intelligence to know where he needs to be at the right time and be able to link up with the players. And I think, I've got my eye on Bukayo Saka, because if he can get 20 goals plus a season, then Havertz and Martinelli or Trossard or Odegaard behind or Declan Rice behind, they don't need to score that many. They just need to chip in. And I think, if Saka can step up, because he seems like the one who's going to, And I think if he does, then everything else will click. And I think Havertz at this moment is benefiting from the fact that teams are focusing so much on everyone in general in the Arsenal squad, because everyone is a threat and everyone can get the ball in the back of the net, as we saw in this game. But we should move on then to Bournemouth 2, Sheffield United 2. And, I will comfortably say I've written off Sheffield United. And just because they got a draw in this game against Bournemouth doesn't mean I think they're back in a chance of staying up, because we have been talking about, the narrative has been, are Sheffield United one of the worst sides in Premier League history? And I think, that narrative is maybe a bit harsh on them, but I do think it's there to be had. And just because they got a draw against Bournemouth, I don't think that narrative is going to change at all. But you have to say credit to them, because they went 2-0 up in this game away at the Vitality Stadium, and they did themselves, very proud, because they played well for the vast majority of this game.
Yeah, they created some really good chances. They looked confident. They weren't just sitting back and thinking, oh, let's just try and keep this game 0-0 as long as we can and grab something late. When they got that first goal, they really, really pressed on and tried to get that second, and they did. In terms of the goals, maybe a little bit lucky on both. I think on the first goal, Neto should have done a lot better to push it away from Harmer, who was there waiting. And again, on that second, I don't think Neto had the best punch. It came off the back of Slanky's head, I believe. Really should have tried to get that ball up and over and out, a bit more distance on it, and then it just fell to a Sheffield United player. So I think maybe the goals were a little bit lucky, but they really did press and play very courageously to try and go and get those, especially away from home against a decent Bournemouth side.
Oh, I agree. I think Neto had a howler for both of the goals, I'll be honest. I think he should have done much better for a player of his experience and his quality. But we got, before even Sheffield United had scored their first goal, Dominic Solanke had a big opportunity to score a penalty, and it was one of the worst penalties I think I've ever seen. I mean, obviously he slipped, but I think to get it that far off target and that high in the air, I thought it was so bad. And I think he was just trolling all the fantasy football managers who captained him and triple captained him this week for the double game week. You thought to yourself, Bournemouth got Sheffield United and then Luton in midweek. Surely Dominic Solanke would be scoring. No, not at all. And he was troll of the week, to be honest with you. But Bournemouth did press and harry, and eventually they found themselves back into the game. And do you know what? It was set pieces, and I think that'll be what would be most frustrating for Chris Wilder, because yes, Sheffield United had a couple of injuries in the game. They had to take off a couple of players. Yes, they were tiring in the game, but we've spoken about it just with the Arsenal game. Set pieces are so, so, so important, and if any newly promoted side comes up to the Premier League next season, they have to be looking at the set pieces, and they have to be doing well defending them and attacking them, because you will get punished at this level. And Bournemouth, a lovely goal by Quattara, but he was completely unmarked in the 6-yard box. And I just thought to myself, what are you doing, Sheffield United? You're giving Bournemouth the initiative to get back into the game. I thought it was really bad defending.
Yeah, as you said, the ball literally went in completely between the zonal markers. No attempt to try and win the ball. Easy free header at the near post. And at that stage of the game, they always say that the 2-1 lead is really difficult, especially when they get that goal at home. The crowd picks up, and then Bournemouth are just going to be going for it. Sheffield United are going to be scared, really trying to hold on and sit right back, and it just makes things worse and worse. And they possibly could have even won this game, Bournemouth, if they would have got that first goal a little bit earlier. I really think they could have completely turned around and got all 3 points, because they were pressing so well, and it just took another corner for Unal to get the equaliser in the 91st minute, and Sheffield United will be absolutely gutted. And again, I feel like we say this in almost every game. It's a bit of a summary of their season, that they do very rarely show some really good moments, but they just can't pick up enough points. It's now 14 points they're on. They're pretty much down. I think there must be, maybe even 10 points, away from safety. So yeah, if you can't hold on to a 2-0 lead with 15 minutes left, you're not leaving much hope really to pick them up anywhere else.
Yeah, and do you know what? Let's play devil's advocate, because I still think absolutely 100%, no doubt in my mind, they're going to get relegated. And I find it weird that the reaction around Sheffield United has kind of changed a little bit from being the worst team in the league ever to now, maybe they got the chance of great escape, and I just don't see it. But let's play devil's advocate, right? So they played 28 games. They're on 14 points, like you said. They're 10 points off Nottingham Forest. They're 11 off Everton. And they're 12 off Brentford. So they're on 14 points at the moment. How many points do they need from the remaining 10 games to actually stay in the league?
I think you're looking at least 20, really. And that's going to be that's seven wins, or 6 wins and 2 draws, which it's not going to happen unless Everton and Forest, one of them goes on a really, really awful run. I still think it's going to be impossible for them to catch up to Luton, I think, at this point, who seem to be playing a lot better, have a lot more about them, and I think we're a lot more confident that they will be picking up points. So yeah, I think when you put it that they need 5 or 6 wins out of 10, and they've struggled to get a few this season, it is mission impossible. I think it's a good summary.
Yeah, but in the Tom Cruise movies, they always end up doing the mission anyway to complete it. But I don't think Sheffield United and Chris Wilder have any chance whatsoever. They'd have to...
That's it. They need a Fabrizio Romano. Get Tom Cruise signed up. He could do a shift at left wing.
Oh my God, even with Tom Cruise, they would struggle. But a team that does have a chance of avoiding relegation, but they didn't take their chances in this game, were Everton, as they lost 2-0 away to Manchester United. And to be honest, I thought this was a game between two poor sides on the day, but the only bit of quality was, the youngster, the teenager, Alejandro Garnacho, who won both penalties for United. And, I just thought to myself, this was quite a dull game, but, Garnacho was a standout.
Yeah, and it's probably not the first time this season we, and I assume United fans, have probably said that. He's looked the brightest spark all season. He looks like he's the hardest worker in the team in terms of pressing. And he's very, very courageous, and I think that's in a United team where they have struggled to really have any bright sparks this season. He won both penalties fantastically. Both were clear penalties and quite clumsy challenges ultimately from Everton. But I think a lot of that was just the skill and the close dribbling. Everton, I didn't think really knew what to do and just stuck out a leg both times, won the penalties and won them the game in that first half an hour. He looked really, really good, and I think if he can just work on his end product a little bit more, I think his finishing this season hasn't been amazing. Some of his sort of final passes and crosses aren't incredible, but the fact that he is 19 and you can see that raw talent, I think he is going to be a very, very good player, and I'm really excited to sort of see how he develops over the next couple of years, and I definitely think he'll be picking up that killer instinct as well to go along with his fantastic drive and his flair.
Oh, absolutely. He is a fantastic player, and the sky's the ceiling for him. It just depends on how far he's willing to work and go for it, and I think he's got the mentality to do that, definitely. But I think for Everton's perspective, yeah, the fouls, both of them. I think Tarkowski, from your captain and one of your most experienced players, I think it was just a silly foul. I think maybe he was too amped up and too aggressive on the fact that, Everton were going to go at Man United, because they did go at Man United in this game. I think arguably Everton in open play were the better side. It's just the fact that, they made 2 calamitous errors. And I think for the second one, Ben Godfrey, not the most experienced, but an experienced Premier League professional should know better than to make a foul in that situation when he's not 100% going to get the ball in the penalty area. I thought to myself, what are you doing? Because, Man United had 2 big chances in this game, and they were the penalties. They created nothing else from open play. And obviously, they didn't really need to because they were already 2-0 up. But I thought to myself, if United had to go on and score from open play, I couldn't really see it in this game, if I'm being honest. I thought Everton, were the better side in that first half. Everton did have, more possession of the ball. They had more shots. They had the better chances. I thought to myself, they were there for the taking, Man United, but Everton just shot themselves in the foot. And I just want to read you out the stat, Toby. So Everton are joint 4th in the Premier League this season for the least conceded goals with 39, level with Man United and Spurs. Only Arsenal, Liverpool and Manchester City have conceded less. However, only Sheffield United on 24 and Burnley on 27 have scored less goals than Everton this season, who are on 29. Is it as simple as they just need to score some more goals?
Honestly, I think it actually might be. They have been so impressive at times this season, especially at the start of the season. They went on a run where they weren't winning many games, but they were performing so well. We were so impressed with Doucouré, with Garner, with Harrison, with McNeil, Idrissa Gueye. All of these players, I think, were performing so fantastically, and even Tarkowski and Branthwaite. I didn't even mention them just there, who have been a fantastic partnership all season. They have impressed me across the whole pitch, and they are sitting just above the relegation zone. I think, looking at the stats and looking at the XG and the difference between those expected stats and what they are actually producing is huge. I think Dominic Calvert-Lewin being the biggest culprit of that. I think his XG is 9.5. I think it was that last game anyway. I can't remember if he picked up any chances in this game, and he's only scored 3 goals. And that overperformance of nearly 7 goals in one player. I know it's your striker, but in one player, those 7 goals, that could easily win you 9, 12 points if those goals come at times where you are drawing a game, which Everton have drawn a lot of games this season, and they get you wins. Is just an absolutely massive difference. And they've tried to correct that with the signing of Beto, and now Beto seeming to be the starting striker, and it doesn't really seem to have changed. And I think it's just across the whole squad. They just need to get a few more finishing drills in the training ground, and then I think they'll be okay. And I think that's probably a positive thing in terms of Everton, that a lot of the foundations are there. And it does just seem to be this one thing that they need to work on. And I think next season, hopefully, they'll be able to work on that, because I'd really like to see them be up there and press on as someone like Wolves or someone like Fulham at this moment in the season, who have really pressed on. So, yeah, for me, I think it is actually strangely just as simple as that. Do you agree, or do you think there are other aspects of their game that they do really need to work on as well?
No, I completely agree with you. I think it's so obvious that, defensively, that they are really good, really resolute, as the stats have shown. And I think it is just putting the ball in the back of the net. And I just think they do have chances. I mean, in the first half, Onana kind of had one. He didn't really get the shot away. But, the ball came in from McNeil from the left-hand side. And it was the second phase of a set play. And then Onana just knees it. And then it bobbles up and he doesn't quite get any contact on it. Second half, they do have chances as well. I think Dobbin flashes one across the 6-yard box. And Calvert-Lewin is looking the other way, because he just a second prior had missed a great chance. Then he wasn't ready for the next ball to come in. And then if he was, then he could have got a tap in at the back post. And I just thought to myself, my God, they were so close to scoring a goal. Man United were there if they wanted to take them. But I thought to myself, yeah, it is just finishing. Because if they can just score a few more goals a bit more regularly, then they will be fine. And to finish up on Man United, they are still a fair way off the Champions League places, and they're not playing the best. But I wanted to ask, in this game, Man United only completed 44 more passes than Everton, who we don't really associate with being a particularly pass-heavy side. Do you see what Erik ten Hag is trying to do with this Man United team?
I certainly understand the game plan, and I understand the principle of it, that they are trying. It's almost like a lower possession way that De Zerbi plays, I think, where he is trying to bait in that press and then play through teams, but play through them a lot quicker, and not worry about having the ball at times when they don't need it, and not sacrificing the space in behind like Brighton do, having a lot more of a solid foundation. They concede a lot less goals, keep a lot more clean sheets. So I do understand it in principle. I just don't think it really works with one of the top sides in the Premier League anyway. I think they do need to have a lot more of the ball. They need to try and adapt their game to get more of the ball and to win that ball higher, because they are still giving other teams too much opportunity of having the ball and creating chances themselves. And I'm not too sure a lot of those players in that team particularly work in that system either still. So it's not bad. It's just not right. And I'll be intrigued to see how long he sort of sticks to his guns, or whether he tries to adapt things, or if he keeps as it is, and then maybe it's just not the right style of play for the club of Man United's size, and maybe that could see Ten Hag potentially be replaced by someone where it could suit a little bit better. No urgent rush to. I don't think it's awful. I'm just not sure if they sort of match each other.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that. I think the game against Liverpool in the FA Cup is huge, because if they get knocked out while at home against Old Trafford, that could not be great. I think also if they start to fall away in the race for the top 4, and then in the end they don't get even top 5, which could possibly be a Champions League spot depending on how teams do in Europe this season, then I think there is potential that there might be a change at the head at Old Trafford, especially considering when you think about where United were under Ten Hag last year, and if you think about the fact that at the last game at home at Old Trafford last season, Ten Hag made a speech about like, oh, thank you for your support for the fantastic season we've had, and don't worry, don't get too excited because we've one more game against Man City in the FA Cup, and you saw the charisma and the ambitiousness of Ten Hag and that United side to see where it is now. I just don't see it whatsoever, I'll be honest. But something else that people don't see is me making a comeback in the quiz because let's be honest, I have no chance. Yes, it is time for the Football Fellowship halftime quiz. We're doing guess a player. We're doing two. First of all, we're doing guess a player based on the clubs that they play for, and secondly, based on their former teammates. Toby, what are the scores?
It is currently 40 points to myself and 28 points to you, Mevin. So a 12-point lead. But there are 10 more points up for grabs today, so it could make it nice and narrow for the bumper episode of the quiz next week. We normally break these quizzes up into 10 episodes, and at the moment, Mev won the first block of 10 episodes when it was only Connect. I won the second block when it was Tenable, and next week is the final episode of this block to get that all-important quiz point. So, yeah, could all change, and next week there could be lots of points up for offer as we make it a bumper one. So don't rule yourself out just yet, Mev.
Yeah, but a bit like Burnley and Sheffield United, I won't be able to convert any of my chances in front of goal. So, Toby, with your 12-point lead, I think you should go first. Do you want to decide first, actually? Do you want to go first or do you want to go second?
Yeah, I'll go first. Go for it.
Okay.
Yeah, sounds good, mate.
All right, so for your guess the player based on their former clubs, your first player. Oh God, I'm doing this again.
we always say that.
Yeah,
we always say your first player.
No, just first player or first club, just the other way around to what it's meant to be. So you're guessing the player based on their former clubs. Your first club for 5 points is Newcastle.
Newcastle. Okay. So potentially obscure. Well, not obscure Newcastle players. Maybe someone like Wijnaldum. He also played at Newcastle. Maybe someone like James Milner. He's quite an interesting one. He was at Newcastle for a bit. At least I think he was at Newcastle. Can I think of anything more interesting? Nah, let's go for Wijnaldum.
It is not Wijnaldum. Good guess though, one of those rogue players. Yeah. So your second club for 4 points is Tottenham Hotspur.
Ooh, okay, Spurs. First name that came straight to my head was David Ginola, because I know he's played for both. But there must be... I think they're quite obvious for both of those. I don't think they'd be the first two. Newcastle and Spurs. Who could that be? I'm going to go for it just because I know it's right. Ginola.
It is not Ginola. Another good guess, another player. Yeah, definitely for Newcastle and Spurs. So your third club for 3 points is Portsmouth.
Portsmouth. Ooh, okay. I'm thinking it's going to be that era where Portsmouth obviously won the FA Cup and they were working their way up the leagues. Someone like... Not obviously Glenn Johnson. Benjani, someone like that maybe. Jermaine Defoe. No, I don't think he played for Newcastle, and I don't think Peter Crouch played for Newcastle either. I know they played for a lot of clubs, but I don't think either of them played there. Nico Cranshaw. Yeah, let's go for Cranshaw.
It is not Nico Cranshaw. As far as I'm aware, he never played for Newcastle.
No, I don't think he did, actually.
Yeah, but that's all right. Good guess. So your next club for 2 points is Notts County.
Oh, bloody hell. Who is this? Notts County. Oh, this is a good one. Notts County. Did Andy Cole play for Spurs and County? I could imagine he played for Portsmouth. Oh, I'm trying to think of Notts County players. Oh, I'm struggling here. Maybe did David James ever play for Spurs? I think he played for Notts County, maybe. Might just be making that up. I'm torn between David James and Andy Cole. Damn, this is tough. I don't know if David James or Andy Cole, either of them played for Spurs.
I'll have to push you for an answer.
Let's go for Andy Cole.
It is not Andy Cole, who actually likes to be referred to as Andrew Cole, as he said in the interview. Okay, and your last club for 1 point is Arsenal.
Who is this? Arsenal and Notts County. Wow, I'm struggling. Arsenal and... I've got it straight away. I should have got this for Notts County way earlier. Sol Campbell, isn't it?
It is Sol Campbell.
Nice.
Yeah, I didn't know how you didn't get it with Notts County. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
Portsmouth, maybe he would have got, and Notts County, surely he's going to get it.
Yeah, I think I was focusing too much on Newcastle because I think he was there after he was at Arsenal, wasn't he, for a bit? Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. That is a good one. I should have got that earlier. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, in sorry, I think of Andrew Cole now. In Campbell's second spell at Arsenal, he was there in the 2010 season. He played 11 times, but I think after that he went to Newcastle and made 7 appearances for them. Yes, and obviously, to be fair, in that same period of time, he played for Notts County, and he played 11 times. But yeah, Spurs, Arsenal, Portsmouth, the main ones.
Yeah, that was a good one. I like that.
Yeah.
Right, are you ready for yours, mate?
I am, yes. Ready, fire away.
Okay, your first club for 5 points is Valencia.
Oh, God. First person I think of is Gary Neville nowadays. I don't even think of a player. Sorry. So, Valencia. Trying to think who this could be. It could be a whole host of players. Let's just throw one off the bat to try and roll someone out. What am I thinking? Why am I thinking Alvaro? I think apart from Valencia City, Mata maybe, David Villa, Mata Demichelis. There's so many. Let's just throw out. Was David Villa even Valencia? Or was he Sevilla? Who knows? Do you know what? Don't want to say him. Yeah, go on. That's it. I'll say David Villa.
It is not David Villa, unfortunately.
Was he at Valencia?
I'm pretty sure he was.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure he was. I think he started at Valencia.
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to...
Or not started, but early.
Yeah.
No, not David Villa, unfortunately. Okay. Your second club for 4 points is Juventus.
Valencia and Juventus. There is a link here, which does ring a bell, but I don't have that specific player in mind. I'm trying to think of Juventus players now. Because obviously Valencia would have been the least obscure, but does that mean the Spanish? Oh, I feel like there definitely has been Valencia Juventus players.
There's been at least one, I can tell you.
At least one, yeah. For some reason I think Cuadrado. I can't tell you why I think Cuadrado, but I just do. So I'm just going to say it, yeah, Juan Cuadrado.
It is not Cuadrado, unfortunately.
Yeah, okay.
Your third club for 3 points is Barcelona.
Oh, God. Come on, Mev. Oh. No. Did he? No, I don't think Arthur Melo did Valencia, Juventus, Barcelona. He did Juventus and Barcelona. Oh, did Pjanic do Valencia, Juventus, Barcelona? Where was he? Where was he on the come up? Maybe he was at Valencia. Who else? I can't think of too many Juventus to Barcelona. I'm going to need a bit more help with that. Okay, let's go for Pjanic.
It is not Pjanic, unfortunately.
No.
I'm not sure if he was at Valencia, but he was at, what did he do? Lyon and Roma, definitely.
Yeah,
Could have done
probably.
Valencia. He's been to a few big clubs. Your fourth club for 2 points is Bayern Munich.
Oh, God. European knowledge failing me here. Bayern Munich, Juventus, Barcelona. I am missing an absolute howler of a player here. Barcelona, Juventus, Bayern Munich. Let's just forget about Valencia for a sec. Juventus?
I tell you what, I'm going to throw in the team that I almost put instead of Bayern because this is a bit of a random list. I'm going to throw in another team that he's played for. Still keep it for 2 points. Inter Milan as well.
Inter Milan. Okay. Juventus, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, Inter Milan.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I should know this. Why do I not know this? I know this. I do know it. I just can't think.
He's at one of these clubs right now as well.
I know. I know it. I know it. Say the name. Just say that. Oh, who is it? I can't describe it, but like I know the player, but I don't know the player. Like I can like.
You've seen his path before.
Yeah, like I know.
What are you thinking?
Oh, I don't have a name. I'm gonna have to pass. I know it, but I don't know it.
All right, I'll give you the last club for a point, which might help. His most known club, certainly, Man City.
What? Hang on. Wait. Most known Man City. What? Hang on. No.
Okay. I was going to give you a little hint.
No, hang on. No. I don't want your hint. Oh, for God's sake, it's João Cancelo.
It is. Well done, mate, for a point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Frustrating. It's frustrating.
He has just played for just dotted all over the place. Started at Valencia, then Juve, and then obviously Inter, City, and then loan spells at Barca and Bayern.
Yeah, it was the loan spells which threw me off. Yeah, I was just like, what? Yeah. Okay.
I thought he's got an interesting career.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, fair enough. Are you ready for your guess a player by teammates?
Hell yeah.
Okay. I wrote 8 names down here, so it just depends on who I fancy going for. So let's go for your first one for 5 points. Edin Dzeko.
Dzeko. Oh, this could be a number of teams. Roma, Inter, City, and Wolfsburg. I would say the first ones that come to mind. There was a Turkish side, but I don't think that's going to do me much good. Maybe at Inter. Thinking someone like Mkhitaryan. That's quite a good guess. I think they played together, and then you could have Arsenal, United, Dortmund, and Roma, which could be Dzeko as well potentially. Yeah, let's go for Mkhitaryan.
It is not Mkhitaryan, but a very good guess. So your second former teammate is Mario Gomez.
Mario Gomez. Okay, so he had a lot of time at Munich. I think he was at Fiorentina as well. And not sure where else. I think he was also in the Turkish league for a bit potentially, but I'm not sure. Maybe it could be Munich and Wolfsburg. Or it could be Fiorentina and an Italian side. But I'm not too sure on any Fiorentina players, to be honest. Let's assume it's Munich and someone. Mario Gomez. Munich and Inter. Is there anyone that comes to mind? Munich and Roma. Munich and City even, potentially. Ooh, maybe that works. Jerome Boateng?
It is not Jerome Boateng, but I do think he does work. Yeah,
He might work with Dzeko at City, but that might not line up.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, very good guess. So your third player for 3 points is Fabian Schär.
Oh God, I have no idea when he's played besides Newcastle. So maybe a Swiss team, maybe. Don't know. I'm gonna have to assume it's Newcastle, at least for this guess. Newcastle, Fiorentina. God, this could be anyone. Is there anyone in the Newcastle side at the moment that's maybe played with these other people? Not that I can think of. Who else is in that team? So we're looking at maybe... Fabian Schär's been there quite a while as well, isn't he? So it could be anyone. No, I'm not too sure on this. Not too sure. Let's just go for... Trippier.
No, it is not Kieran Trippier.
No.
Okay, so your fourth teammate for 2 points is Ryan Gravenberch.
Gravenberch. Oh, that could be Munich as well, but then obviously that rules out Gomez for Munich. Or it could be Liverpool at the moment. Cool. This is a tough one. Who could... Oh. Got it. I think it might be FC Basel with Schär, Gravenberch Liverpool, Fiorentina with Gomez, and Roma with Dzeko. And maybe it's Mo Salah?
Oh, you've nailed it.
Yes.
Yeah, very well done. I thought the only way
Nice.
to make it interesting was to give rogue players. So obviously he's played with all these players, but he hasn't made many appearances. So I thought that's how I'd get you. And obviously the last one was
Nice.
Gary Cahill, and you would probably gone Bolton or Chelsea, Liverpool, and then thought, yeah,
Nice.
very well done.
That was a good one. I like the FC Basel link with Fabian Schär. That's a cool one.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't know how many teams he's played for and where he played previously, then yeah, it can throw you. But I thought Swiss League, you'd probably get it.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Right, are you ready for yours, mate?
Yes, let's go.
Your first player for 5 points is Scott Dan.
Oh my God, a throwback. So I remember Scott Dan, mainly because he was at that Blackburn side that was doing really well. Well, when I was getting into football. And I don't remember anywhere else apart from in Blackburn. So let's go with Yakubu.
It is not Yakubu. It is not the Yak.
Feed the Yak and he will score.
What a man.
Yeah.
Your second player for 4 points is Lee Catamol.
God, I'm really going through it here. Again, Lee Cadamo, all I can remember is Sunderland. And I remember I gave him to you once, and you were like, did he play for Sunderland? Did he play for Stoke? It was definitely Sunderland. He hasn't played for Stoke. Blackburn, Sunderland. Let's go for... Did he? No. Yeah? No. Maybe. No, I don't think John O'Shea. I was going to say Johnny Evans, but he didn't play for Sunderland. It's that time where I'm thinking Blackburn. Oh, he got to be a rogue player for Blackburn, and Sunderland is slightly more well known. I'm trying to think. Could it be Joe Barton? Did he play for Sunderland? No, he played for Newcastle. I don't think he played for Sunderland. I don't think maybe he played for Blackburn. Oh God, let's go for Sylvain Distin.
Oh, it is not Sylvain Distin, but what a name.
Yeah.
What a man. Your third player for 3 points is Genie Wijnaldum.
Wijnaldum. So he was obviously PSV, Newcastle, Liverpool, oh God, PSG, and Roma. I forget how many teams he played for. So he's a lot more recent than Scott Dan. Former teammate of Scott Dan and Wijnaldum. See, before you said Wijnaldum, I was thinking Sunderland, Blackburn could have been Stephen Pienaar, but now I don't think so.
I think you could get this with just Wijnaldum and Catamol. I think there's a little
Really?
link there that I think you could get here for 3.
Well, Catamol. What? Would he? Maybe. Okay, I'm gonna go with Fabio Barini.
It is not Fabio Borini, unfortunately.
Okay.
Your fourth player for 2 points is Steve Gerrard.
Oh, God. So, Liverpool and LA Galaxy. Oh, if you went for LA Galaxy for this player instead of Liverpool. So, it's not Liverpool for Wijnaldum. It is a player from back in the day. Oh, no. Hang on. Andy Carroll? No. Craig Bellamy? Where would he play with Wijnaldum? No. A Liverpool player played with Gerrard, who was also rubbish. Not Glenn Johnson. Not the centre-backs. Konchesky? Oh, God. Where would he play with Wijnaldum? He wouldn't have. Midfield. Oh, God, I can't think. Scott Dan and Cadamo really throw me off here. I don't have a clue. Let's go for David and Gog.
It's not David and Gog, but a great shout again.
Yeah.
Your final player for 1 point is Bergwijn.
Bergwijn. So I'm pretty sure he's PSV as well. But Spurs. No, is he Ajax? Is he? No, he's gone.
I was just going to say it's the club that Bergwijn is at the moment.
Which is... God,
because there wasn't another player on the list that was definitely from this club, so I figured, you could probably guess which club it is.
He's fallen off a cliff, Bergwijn, hasn't he? I think, to be honest, I think he's at Ajax. I'm not sure. I think he's harder off at PSV. Oh God, hang on, right? No. Blackburn, Sunderland.
I think if you list Catamol, Gerrard and Bergwijn's clubs, I think you'll get it straight away.
Catamol, Bergwijn and Gerrard. So you're telling me Spurs, Liverpool and Sunderland?
No, it's Bergwijn's current club.
I don't know Bergwijn's current club.
It is Ajax.
It is Ajax. Oh, yeah. No, wait. No, I don't know. I was going to say Henderson, but it's not Henderson.
Why not?
Did he play at Blackburn? Did he? I don't think he did.
He didn't play at Blackburn, but he might have played with Scott Dan somewhere.
Oh, no way is he playing at DFAC. Is it Henderson?
It is Jordan Henderson.
Hang on, you're going to have to go through this with me.
It's Scott Dan at Coventry.
Oh, God, I didn't know he played for Coventry.
In 2008. Catamol, obviously, it's under Wijnaldum was Al Ettifaq.
Oh.
I was unsure whether to go for Wijnaldum or like one of the Saudi players, but I thought that might give the club as opposed to just the Saudi league. Yeah, Gerrard and Bergwijn, Ajax at the moment.
Not a clue. To be fair, I don't have much of a clue with this anyway.
Yeah, 2 points overall for you, 3 points for me. Not a very high scoring round of the quiz there, but some very good links. I think we had some interesting links at least.
Oh, would you look at that? You extend your lead even further, don't you?
Yeah.
What a surprise, am I right? But anyway, shall we get back to the football?
Let's get back to it swiftly.
Yeah, with West Ham 2, Burnley 2, and a bit like the Bournemouth and Sheffield United game, Burnley decided who were the underdogs, but actually went 2-0 up in this game until West Ham responded. And again, similar to Sheffield United, where has his performance been all season?
Yeah, it was almost identical. They started really, really well, Burnley. Looked like they were quite happy trying to go at West Ham, especially away from home. And a really, really good start. Fofana scored a lovely goal, such a clean strike into the top bins. And they got fairly lucky with that second goal, the own goal from Mavropanos. But, yeah, to go in at half-time 2-0 up, it's when these things happen. Same with Sheffield United. You think, okay, they can turn up, they can perform. Maybe they could stay up. But then in the second half, you watch that and you see why they're probably going to go down. Just completely fell apart. And West Ham actually probably could have won it by the end.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just the first goal by Paqueta was just a massive error by Steve. I think, to be fair, the second one, Danny Ings, is a lovely turn-up finish, but I think maybe Trafford could have done better as well. And that's when you don't include the offside one from Antonio, which, got David Moyes a bit angry because of the fact that he thought maybe it wasn't offside, even though the line said it was. But I do understand what he means, in fact, that the blue line for the Burnley defender is straight, and the red line for Michael Antonio is slightly ajar. And I do understand what it means, but I think it's just a funny angle. I don't think there's a massive conspiracy against West Ham. But then, to be fair, Ings hit the crossbar as well. Could Michael Antonio have had a pen? I don't think it was. Sander Berg had chances. Oh my god! And then we should talk about it. Did Sander Berg handle the ball in his own area? What did you think?
Again, I feel like it's so many of these decisions where it's like, oh, if I was this team, I wouldn't like it. If I was that team, I wouldn't like it. I don't know. I don't know. I would probably say no. I think handball is a weird one, but for me, I would probably just say, like the refs, maybe think it's safer not to give it because it didn't feel definitive. What about you?
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same wavelength as you. It's like, I don't know, because I'd be like, I wouldn't if I was heading the ball because I'm heading it down just to cushion it, I wouldn't be heading it with my hands that far in front of me. There'd be more to like a 45 maybe, or just to balance me out. And I didn't understand why his hands were there in the first place, but I don't think it was intentional. I think it was ball to hand, but still, it was, to be fair, it was pretty awful technique in terms of heading a football. But to be fair to West Ham, they did come back into the game. Burnley did struggle, but I thought, what, that last 15 minutes was some of the best football I've seen in the Premier League. It was end-to-end, chances at both sides. I mean, Sanderberg could have won it, twice at the end for Burnley. And, it was a cracking game of football, especially in that second half. But I do want to say, at halftime, there were boos raining down the London Stadium. And with West Ham 1-0 down in the Europa League against Freiburg, they do have the second leg to turn it around. It does seem like the West Ham fans are becoming increasingly more vocal against David Moyes.
Yeah, we've been touching on this sort of the last couple of weeks, and I don't really get why as much. I think they're only in the position that they were a few months ago because of David Moyes. They're only in the position the club is in at the moment because of David Moyes, the way he's worked with the squad, the way he's built the squad. I don't really get it. I don't really know what West Ham's expectations are. I know they're on a bit of a poor run of form, but they're still in a really good position. They probably will still finish top half, which I think is a good aim for the season at the moment, considering their league position last season. I don't think realistically they could be pushing for Europe with the sides around them at the moment. I think that's something they can definitely attain for next year and set that as a goal to try and get back into Europa League, Conference League places. I don't really get it, to be honest. I think he's done a very good job, and I think he's still doing a pretty good job, even if this result isn't the best. But the way they brought it back is at least something to commend. So yeah, I think they'd be absolutely ridiculous to get rid of Moyes anytime soon. What do you reckon?
I agree for the most part, but I am starting to maybe see it, especially with the first half performance, where I don't think Burnley were lucky to be 2-0 up. I think they probably were the better team in that first half, and in that way I can understand it. And I think to myself, if David Moyes gets knocked out of Europe against Freiburg, which is the team they did beat in the group stages, and then they don't secure Europe for next season, and the football, while it does get results, if it continues to not be the most pleasing on the eye, I can definitely see the fans forcing a change, even though I don't think that it should be maybe what they're looking for. I think you're fine to have maybe a down spell or a down period or maybe a bad season. But I think to sack him, I think would be incredibly harsh. But then we should move on then to Crystal Palace 1, Luton Town 1. And Crystal Palace were the better team in this game. Absolutely dominated Luton Town. but somehow gave it away right at the very end. It was so disappointing for Oliver Glasner. It could have been the first Crystal Palace manager ever to win his first 2 home games. Wasn't to be, and Rob Edwards and Luton Town continued to keep on fighting.
Yeah, it's really, really good signs for Palace, though. I think they've looked very good. They've looked very positive under Glasner. I think the 3-back system seems to suit them really, really well. I think it balances their attack and their defence really well. I think he's given Mitchell and Munoz sort of a lot of freedom, which we would have expected given his time at Frankfurt. And yeah, they just look really good, and the players seem to have bought into this system very quickly as well. Just unlucky that they weren't able to get it. As you said, they did dominate, but that fighting spirit from Luton that everyone keeps going on about and how it could keep them up is come again. It's got them a really big, important away point right at the death.
Yeah, but I do also have to say that I think a little bit in this game was luck. I think Crystal Palace had their chances to put the game to bed. I think, to be fair, Luton kind of caused their own, downfall in this game a little bit. I think the goal for the Crystal Palace I think it was a terrible back pass by Alfie Doughty, a player who praised all season for being fantastic and composed on the ball. Terrible back pass to Osho, and then who tried to leave for the keeper, but there was no way the keeper was ever getting there. And a lovely back heel by Mateta. And I think there was another back pass in the middle, I think from Clark to the keeper, but Mateta got through. And if he had got that on target, that's a goal. And then Crystal Palace are 2-0 up. I think, oh my God, Eze's shot from just under halfway, the one that just hits the roof of the net. I thought that was absolutely amazing. And, a player like Eze doing it on the same ground, funnily enough, as David Beckham did his iconic goal from halfway. I thought, Crystal Palace did have chances, 6 big chances in this game. They missed 5 of them. And I think, when you let Luton Town come back into the game, they absolutely will.
Yeah, and speaking of not taking your chances as well, Fulham had exactly the same problem against Wolves in their 2-1 defeat. They racked up an XG of nearly 3, and they just could not put the ball in the back of the net. I think Jose Sarr had a very good game, which is something that maybe we haven't seen so much of in the last couple of years. He seems to have dropped off, but in this game he was superb. They just could not put the ball in the net, and Wolves were the complete opposite and were so clinical.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Wilson, the one-on-one he has with Sarr, I think Tosin at the back post, where it's a fairly simple finish for a Premier League player, regardless of if he's a defender or a striker. They really didn't take their chances, but then Wolves absolutely did. I think Ryan Nori with a wonderful goal. I think, to be fair, it was a poor clearance by Calvin Bassey. I wasn't really sure where he was trying to head the ball to. Maybe he jumped and maybe he timed his jump a bit wrong, or maybe didn't get enough power into it. But I thought it was a really, really poor clearance. And I think, to be fair, the second goal for Wolves were just really, really unlucky by Tom Cairney to concede the own goal. I think Semedo's shot is going nowhere near into the back of the net, but I think it was just unfortunate. But Fulham obviously did get their goal eventually through Alex Iwobi. But I think the big talking point for Fulham again, Wolves again is, again, they got injuries. Bellegarde went off injured. Pedro Neto, who's going to be a massive miss for them, picked up a hamstring injury. And just injuries at the wrong time for a team who could potentially be fighting for Europe.
Yeah, it's such a shame, and it could be this season more of a what if as opposed to how did they end and what happened, which is a shame because there was a lot of question marks at Wolves at the start of the season. I think the fans were in a bit of disarray with the club. Gary O'Neill came in, who I don't think people were expecting him to do too much. Potentially maybe even just to try and keep them up and try and push on potentially for those mid-table places. And the performances they've put out, the points they've picked up has been superb. And as we said, with those injuries, it could have been even better. And next 10 games, it could see a lot less sort of output from them with that many forwards being dropping.
Yeah, and to be fair, credit to him, because after 28 games, he's got 41 points, and that is the whole tally of Wolverhampton Wanderers, the whole of last season. And to do it with 10 games left, he's done a fantastic job so far. And the manager who's potentially stuttering in his job is Nuno Espirito Santos, as his Nottingham Forest side lose 1-0 away to Brighton and Hove Albion. And this wasn't the best of games, but Brighton did get over the line, which is something they desperately needed to do, having lost their last game in the FA Cup versus Wolves, having lost their last league game versus Fulham, and having lost massively in the Europa League 4-0 against Roma. It's a much needed morale boost, wasn't it?
Yeah, they have been just so inconsistent, Brighton, this year. They cannot string 2-3 wins in a row at all, not even since the start of the season in August and September. They are still showing good signs, and they just can't put it into performances. But I think the big takeaway for Brighton in this game will be keeping a clean sheet. They've really struggled defensively, I think, this season. One of the lowest clean sheets, one of the highest goals conceded in those top positions at least. And they are going to have those aspirations of trying to get back into Europe again, especially because it looks like have got a mission impossible against Roma in the second leg. So, yeah, a good result. Nothing incredible, but 3 points and a clean sheet I think is good. And in terms of Forest, they'll be disappointed. They did have a couple chances in this game. It was maybe a bit more even than if people would expect. So, yeah, a bit of a shame for them as well.
Yeah, and it could have been a little bit better for them had Moder seen red. And I don't know, the referee gave it as a yellow card. I actually think it was a red card. I do agree with Nuno Espirito Santos after his post-match. I think it might be exaggerating a little bit with the whole, oh, woe is me, why always us? But I do think that this is another decision that the referees have got wrong. Did you see the challenge? What did you think of it?
Yeah, I agree, mate. I think it was definitely a red card. It was 2 foot off the air, pretty dangerous, pretty reckless, and I think a red card would have been fair. On the other foot, though, I think that Forest could have probably had a red as well. The free kick that Brighton won that they scored from Omar Bamidele was on a yellow, and I think he probably should have got a second yellow. It was a pretty bad challenge. But then I suppose if he would have got sent off, he wouldn't have scored the own goal to put them 1-0 up. So swings and roundabouts, I guess. But yeah, that Moder one was definitely a red. It was a pretty nasty challenge.
I know it's late in the podcast, but do you think Bamidele's challenge was a yellow?
I think that second challenge that they got the free kick from, I think it was a yellow. It was pretty bad, and I think if he wasn't on a yellow already, it would have definitely been a yellow. And I think it was just because it was still fairly early in the game that he didn't get it.
Nah, mate. I know we're in the ends and no one's probably listening at this point, but I think he got the ball there. To be honest with you, I think he gets a toe to it, and I think the contact he gets with the man is afterwards. And I just think to myself, he's got the ball. I didn't think it should have been a foul, if I'm honest.
Well, there we go. That's the end of the podcast after all these episodes, Mev, because I'm not having that, and I'm not recording this with you anymore. No, I'm joking. Yeah.
No, it's just weird because we normally
just agree.
The way of thinking, the way of thinking about football, we're quite similar. I was just like, what?
Maybe I think I might have my very slight Brighton hat on for that one. Maybe I'm a bit biased towards Brighton.
Mate, you should have your red ones for Nottingham Forest. We went to uni there.
I know. I'm from Sussex, mate.
Ground.
I'm from Sussex, mate. My granddad's a Brighton fan, so
oh, come on.
There's roots there, mate. There's roots there. And they play lovely football, so that always helps.
Yeah. Doesn't get them the result against Roma though, does it?
No, it doesn't. But they get 5-0, mate. Clip that. 5-0 next leg.
Yeah. No chance.
Danny Welbeck hat-trick.
Oh my God, Danny Welbeck. That guy Welbs. Anyway, I think, that is the end of the podcast. Not permanently. We will be back next week. A little bit of a reduced schedule with the FA Cup matches, but we'll be talking about that as well. Make sure to tune in for the end of the Football Fellowship quiz, the third time around we're doing it. Make sure to check out the Bonanza. We're going to have 3 games each. It's going to be more for you to get involved with. And with that being said, thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next one.